Hello, this is Russell Davies with The Art of Artists, welcoming this time an instrumental star who's done as much for the electric guitar, and latterly acoustic too, as any man living. Hank B. Marvin, late of the Shadows. Having backed Cliff Richard in a number of hits, the group set about recording on its own account, not in defiance of Cliff, but with his blessing, as we'll hear. So the unmistakable sound of Hank's lead guitar influenced an entire generation of British guitar greats, as they have frequently acknowledged. Here's a sample of the sound, taking us back more than half a century, though there's nothing on the record to give its age away. It's Wonderful Land. Wonderful Land by the Shadows, 1962, recorded 61 actually, with that pealing melody, as in bells pealing, played by my guest Hank B. Marvin. Hank, yours is a name I've known most of my life. I bid you welcome.
Hello, Russell. It's great to be here. Thanks very much.
Well, it's wonderful to meet an actual living example of rhyming slang as well. In case anybody listening has missed this, it's a rhyme for starving, as in Shall we go for a curry, I'm Hank, or better still, Shall we go for a Ruby, I'm Hank.
Yes, that's
Ruby
right.
Murray being the curry, and poor Ruby's been gone best part of 20 years.
Nice
she
lady,
lives
too.
on in the rhyme.
She was a nice lady.
Yeah, you must. Yes,
I
of
worked with her
course.
a couple of times,
Coincided with
yeah,
you in the
yeah.
Hippo, yes. Did you have any particular wonderful land in mind as you put that tune over? Because latterly you've been living in Australia, which is a good
Yes.
candidate, I should think.
Yes, I live in Western Australia, which is a bit isolated from the rest of the world, Perth, but it's a good place to live. Some beautiful countryside outside of Perth, like the Swan Valley, or you head south to towards Margaret River, lovely rolling hills and things. But with Wonderful Land, the reason I chose this is it is a beautiful melody. I think it's a very majestic melody. It's a tune written by Jerry Lorden, who also wrote Apache for us. And we recorded this, as you said, in 1961, Russell, and just the four shads.
Yeah.
And as good as the song is, as the tune is, it didn't sound complete. And we talked with Norrie Paramore and felt that we had to do something with it. So we went off on tour. We came back. He said, listen, guys, I'd like you to listen to something I've done to this track. And what he had done is added orchestra and French horn on the introduction to echo my introductory guitar phrase. And now it sounded complete. It sounded as it should do. It was a magnificent tune, and now I felt it was really doing it justice. And I'm glad to say the public agreed, because it was a big seller for us.
Yeah. We should explain that Norrie, as well as being the MD for EMI Columbia in those days, I mean, he was an orchestral arranger and very good at strings.
Yes, he was, Russell. A very good string writer. And of course, he had the Big Ben banjo band as well.
He did. Absolutely, yeah. As you mentioned, Jerry Lorden. Now, his is a name many people now forget to remember. I mean, he was a Londoner with obviously a great flair for melody, a words and music songwriter some of the time.
Yes.
Other than that, I don't know too much about him. Did you see a lot of him at the time, or was it a question of these pieces arriving, you know?
Well, at the time, we met Jerry because he was on tour with us. He had, as you say, he wrote words and music, and he was encouraged to record some of his own material. He wasn't comfortable with it. He wasn't a very good singer, nor was he a performer, but he was almost coerced into doing it, and he had two small hits. And he was one of the support acts on a tour we did in the spring of 1960. And we got very friendly with Jerry. And it was due to that relationship developing and him inquiring if we, as the Shadows, as against Cliff, of course, were going to record any more material. And we said, well, yes, we are, when we finish this tour. And he asked the question, well, instrumental or vocal? We said, well, probably a bit of each. And he said, if you want an instrumental, I've got a tune I've written, I think it would be perfect for you. And that's when he sang us Apache. He got his little ukulele out, that's how he composed, strummed a few chords and sang the tune to Apache. We loved it, and then we arranged it and recorded it. Of course, the rest is history as concerns the success of that around the world.
Yeah.
Wonderful tune.
Well, we'll come to that. We'll come to that later. But let's go back to your roots first, on Tyneside. You were Brian Robson Rankin then. A more wonderfully characteristic Newcastle name will be hard to invent, particularly the Brian Robson part.
That's right.
The
football,
but you were already called Hank as quite a young lad.
From about 12 years old, yeah. At grammar school, I was called Hank. I think what happened was the Rankin part of my name became diminished to rank,
Yes.
and then became Hank.
Right.
And it stuck, and everyone, including my parents, started to call me Hank. So that was it, And then I changed my name by deed poll when I was 18 to Marvin.
Yeah.
I was fed up with signing, Hank, Brian Rankin, also known as Hank Marvin. I thought, blow this for a lark.
And the Marvin, that came from Marvin Rainwater, did it? I've read that.
Yeah. He, for those who don't know, he was an American country and western singer, popular in the States, and he had a huge hit in the UK called A Whole Lot of Woman.
I remember.
And I liked the sound of Marvin.
A very testosterone-laden.
Yes.
I mean, he was a powerful, big-chested guy.
He was part Cherokee Indian, I believe.
Yes. I remember A Whole Lot of Woman. I looked that record up in case you were going to call for it today, and it's remarkable. There were two guitarists on that session that produced it. Hank Garland and Grady Martin. So Hank Marvin is almost in there already.
Two fabulous players.
And they were both top Nashville guys. Yes,
absolutely.
They were.
I have a CD somewhere of Hank Garland. I think he made one CD on his own.
Just on it?
Wonderful
Really?
player, yeah.
Because he was on everything, wasn't he?
He
With
was
everybody.
indeed, yeah.
Didn't you play banjo first? Is that right?
I tried, yes. I did. I was mad about New Orleans and Chicago jazz and folk blues music. And in conversation with one of the teachers at grammar school, he taught both French and music. And it was actually in a music class at the end of the class. This came up in conversation, and he said, don't they use banjos in New Orleans jazz? I said, yes, they do. And he said, I have a banjo. I said, really? Do you want to sell it? And he said, well, actually, yes, I do. I will sell it. I said, how much do you want? He said, £2.10. So I said, done. And he agreed that I should pay him £0.50 a week. And he brought the banjo the next day to school. I gave him £0.50 as a deposit. Yeah. And each week, £0.50. And I still have the banjo. It's hanging on the wall, and he still has a £2.10.
4-string one?
It was a 5-string banjo.
A 5-string? Right. So you could do
But I used it as a 4-string banjo for, playing the plonk, plonk, plonk in the jazz.
Yes. It was early rock that got you into the guitar mood, really. I suppose Buddy Holly, was it? Because
Buddy Holly, Scotty Moore on the Presley records, Cliff Gallup on the Gene Vincent records, Chuck Berry. Yeah. They all had a different approach, but all very twanging, very exciting.
Yes.
I mean, that was brand new music at that time, and for people who've sort of younger people now who've hearing where we are now, it might be a bit tame to listen to that, but at the time it was innovative, groundbreaking.
Yes, it was the specs, of course, that made me think of Buddy Holly, because I mean there are times in photographs of those days where you could look very, very similar.
Yeah. Some people said I look like Arthur Askey.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. That with young people listening today might think it was a bit tame, because they can see why Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis were powerful and shocking to their parental generation at the time. But they're surprised how gentle Buddy Holly seems as a sound, anyway. He wasn't ripping up the joint.
Not in the same way, no.
No. Let's get you to London, because obviously it was London that you came, and lo and behold, you turned up at the 2's coffee bar in Old Compton Street, where the Vipers had been resident for a while, I think. But and we imagined that all the early British rockers were there, Terry Dean and Adam Faith, Wee Willie Harrison. Is that right? Was it teeming with faces that we would still recognise?
I wouldn't say it was teeming with faces, but now and again, some of those people would wander down there. Terry Dean, for example, Wee Willie Harris, saw him down there a few times. Adam Faith, or Terry Nellums as he was then, had been with a group called the Worried Men.
Yeah. Well, it's a very small place, wasn't it?
A tiny cellar underneath the coffee bar. Some people have a bigger sitting room than that.
Yes.
But they crammed so many people there on a Friday and Saturday night. You could barely move, hence the hand jive. Yeah, people couldn't literally dance, so they started doing this little dance with the hands.
Willie and the hand jive.
Yeah.
And Cliff, was he there, or did you meet him somewhere else?
I didn't meet Cliff there. I remember I was ill one time, and Bruce came back. We had a bed sit up Crouch Inn near Finsbury Park. And he said, there was a guy came in tonight, looked a bit like Elvis. He said, really good. I liked his voice. And we found out that was Cliff, had been in, no one knew him in those days, of course. Yeah. And Bruce had seen him, but I don't think Bruce actually met him. He just saw him there and didn't say anything to him,
So how long before Cliff Richard and the Drifters, as they were then, came together? They were already together. There was a group.
Well, Cliff had a band called the Drifters.
Yes.
Cliff Richard and the Drifters. There was Cliff, there was his friend Terry Smart on drums, Ian Samwell on bass guitar, and another friend of theirs also on guitar, and Cliff strumming rhythm. But by the time it came for Cliff to do his first professional tour, which was in October, he was the support of the Kalin Twins, who had a big #1 hit with When You Smile.
Yes.
He needed to put a band together, because by this time he'd done the first couple of his Oh Boy shows.
Yes.
And Jack Good, the producer, had persuaded him to drop the guitar and work without the guitar. Mm-hmm. So he needed a lead guitar player and a rhythm guitar player. And his manager, John Foster, heard me play and said, do you want to do this tour with Cliff? And I said, yeah, great. I found out he needed a rhythm player, so I recommended Bruce. Worst thing I've ever done in my life. Just joking, folks. And we did the tour with Cliff.
Yes.
Funny thing on that tour, Russell, I was playing with Cliff, the Most Brothers. That was Alex and Mickey Most, who became the record producer.
Sure.
I did When with the Kalin Twins,
yes.
and Rebel Rouser with the band who backing the Kalin Twins. I was actually earning more money on that tour than Cliff was, which he's never let me forget.
Wonderful. I bought Move It, the inaugural hit, and the good news is I bought it for the guitar introduction. But the bad news is that was just before you joined, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
It's a session man called Ernie Shears who did that. Yeah.
Well, I first heard that record on the jukebox on the 2's, and I thought, wow, what a great record. And I really thought it was an American record. It was. I couldn't imagine that coming out of the UK.
Yeah.
Now, talking to Cliff about this, Ian Samwell, who wrote the song, had the intro, but on single notes.
Yes.
Now, Burt Whedon was booked for the session and couldn't do it. So Norrie Paramore, who we mentioned earlier, the record producer, booked Ernie, who he used in the Big Ben Banjo Band playing banjo, but also a very good guitarist. And Ian Samwell taught Ernie the introduction. Then Ernie said, hey, what about doing it on 2 strings instead of 1, and played the introduction. Great. Magic sound. I tell you what, Ernie did a fantastic job on that record. His guitar interjections in between the vocal
were
brilliant,
phrase,
absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
So Cliff on that session recorded his first 2 hits, Move It and High Class Baby.
Yeah.
After the tour, we had Cliff had more sessions coming up and persuaded Norrie to let Bruce, myself and Jet Harris be on the records, which we were. So from the 3rd record, Living Loving Doll, not Living Doll.
Right.
Living Loving Doll, we were on every session after that, yeah.
Yeah. And the Shadows, of course, grew out of that. Let's hear another of the giant hits. This is Apache, you've already talked about it. Another number where another guitarist could have spoiled the story because it was Burt Whedon, the great Burt, whose guitar tutor everybody had, in my experience. He did record it first.
Yeah, he did. I didn't have his tutor, by the way.
You didn't? Good. Well, you're the exception, I think, rather than the...
Yeah, well, when Jerry Lorden, as I explained earlier, played us this tune, and we loved it, and we said, right, we're going to record. He said, look, there's a bit of a caveat here. It's already been recorded by Burt Whedon, and we went, oh, no. He said, but it's been sitting in the archives, in the can, for about the last 6 months. It doesn't look like they're doing anything with it. And he said, if there's any consolation, it's a really very poor version. There's no feel in it, anything. He said, I was very disappointed when I heard it. We said, okay, well, so we were, of course, as soon as it was known that we were releasing it, Bert's company released his version.
Yeah. Oh, dear. This was done at Abbey Road, wasn't it? Was the Abbey Road studio itself equipped for all that echo thing, or did you bring your own equipment in for that?
Well, of course, Abbey Road had reverb.
Yes.
It had an echo chamber.
Right.
Which was an actual room where they had a microphone in to put the music through that. But they also had an echo plate in there, or several echo plates, which gave you a different kind of reverb. Now, the echo I use on Apache and all the Shadow stuff was my own echo box. It's something I could use live or on record. And the one I used in those days was sold by Vox.
Right.
Jennings, who made Vox amplifiers, they sold this, but it was actually an Italian echo box. The original name would have been Miazzi, and it was a wonderful sound. It helped me develop that different sound and approach, you know.
Well, let's hear the sound it made first. I'll ask you more about the record after. Apache. Apache by the Shadows, with Hank Marvin, my guest, on the lead guitar. We lived with the sound of that for so long. Were the Shadows a group in the social sense? Did you go around together a lot, or did you mainly come together for strictly musical purposes?
No, we did hang around together, yeah. we did work a lot in those days. You know, we were in studios, doing TVs, writing together, being on the road. And Cliff was included in that. We were more like a 5-piece band. You know, we used to go to the movies together, we'd party together. So it was quite a close-knit relationship.
Yeah.
Not without its disputes and squabbles, of course, which happens in any band, and sometimes fisticuffs on occasion. But on the whole, you know, we spent a lot of time together and we're pretty good mates.
Yeah, but the attention Cliff was getting as an individual, that didn't in itself split him off from the chaps.
No, not at all. He always liked to include himself with us as it's almost like a 5-piece band rather than a singer and a backing band. And funnily enough, some people might know this, it was Cliff himself who persuaded Norrie Paramore, our record producer, to give us, the Drifters, as we were still called then, an audition so that we could record independently of Cliff. And Cliff arranged all that for us.
2 more things became instantly famous, of course. One completely personal to you, and that was the tremolo arm on your guitar, which you just give a little shake to in passing. Very nonchalant as you did it, but the number of learner guitarists I saw come into grief with that, because it completely put them off their phrasing if they had to do that as well.
Yeah.
Was it difficult, or did you just have a knack
At
for
first it was difficult, yes. You know, they call it, as you said, tremolo arm, but it's actually a vibrato bar. It creates a vibrato, not a tremolo.
Right.
And people now call them whammy bars and this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But look, that was a very important component for me in helping me develop a style, because those guitars in those days were all strung with very heavy strings. It was very hard to bend. The second string was the only one you could really bend, maybe half a tone. With the vibrato bar, I could pull it up another half tone, get the full tone bend.
Yeah.
I could put a vibrato on the strings so it sounded more voice-like and made it sing more. I could hit a note and dip the string down slightly under the note or bring it up to the note. More like a vocal approach. And as you said, you could give it a good shake. For example, the beginning of Man of Mystery.
Yes.
I do a double stop thing at the top of the neck and give it a good shake. And it's very dramatic. And, you know, when I first did that, people loved it. Whoa, what's going on here?
Yes. A sinister quiver.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you couldn't think of anything else, give it a good shake.
Yes. The other thing, of course, was the shadow walk, which you did as you played. It was sort of walking in squares.
Yeah.
If people don't know, in time to the beat. There was something strangely compelling about it. I really don't know why.
Neither do I. But look, one thing I do know is that it became a trademark, a visual and performance trademark for the Shadows. And people liked it.
Yeah.
Because the first time we did anything like that, I remember it very well, we were in Leeds.
Yeah.
Now, I'd hate to name drop, but we were in Leeds. And we were doing a week at the Leeds Empire. It's tail end of Variety. And we were putting a new number in the show called Willie and the Hand Jive.
Yeah.
And we're talking about this. We felt it was almost there musically, just about ready to put it in. But we were trying to think how we could improve the presentation of the show. Because up till this point, it was a very chaotic rock and roll presentation, you know, running around the stage, doing what you want, lying on your back, feet in the air, jumping on the piano stool, all manner of things. We thought, how can we maybe do something different? And coincidentally, Bruce, myself, and Cliff, although we hadn't known each other at the time, had gone to see Jerry Lee Lewis in 1958 on his aborted tour. And on the show as a support was a band called the Treniers, an American band, black Americans, great rhythm and blues band, piano, Fender bass, drums, and sax. I think maybe a guitar too, and 2 singers. And the bass, sax, guitar, and singers, they did these movements now and again together, and we thought, wow, that's great. Anyway, as we're thinking about this, thoughts went back to that situation, and we thought, well, hey, maybe we could do something similar. So we worked out a routine for Willie and the Hand Jive. Bruce and myself standing each side of Cliff, you know, doing an interrupt, ba-doomed up all this stuff, and then the harmonies and the choruses. And then when it came to the guitar solo, we all stepped back in unison, and then did these steps, kick, steps the other way, kick.
Yeah.
And we rehearsed it, and we thought we were okay to put it in. We put it in 2 nights later, and the reaction from the audience, it was great. They loved it. We thought, yes, this is the way to go, you know, put more of this sort of thing in. And it became, as you say, very much associated with us.
Yes.
As Ronnie Wood said, he said, "No, the shadows, they twitch."
Now, making films was another step bound to be taken. The Young Ones came up in 1961, the second most popular film of that year, I think, after The Guns of Navarone. But some of us were disappointed that you shadows, as characters, got lost. They could have been used as the Beatles were used later on, a few years later, but they didn't. Did you come close to doing that? Or?
Well, the problem was really that they did talk about it originally, but then they felt that obviously we had no experience of acting. We were very young at the time when we actually made the movie, sort of 18 or 19. And when the Beatles did their Hard Day's Night, whatever, they were sort of 23, 24 years old.
And they've been at it for a while, haven't they? Yes,
and it's, that's a different situation. So they didn't feel confident about putting us in an acting role, which we weren't too upset about it because it would have been a nerve-wracking and probably a shocking experience for the audience. But we were able to write a few songs for the movies and perform in it, and that was good for us because, people think if you do a movie, you're a film star. You're not really, of course. You're just having a little cameo role but hey, it was a wonderful experience to do that.
Yeah.
It really was.
The plot was lifted straight out of Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney, wasn't it? The Babes in Arms or something.
I'm sure it was.
Putting the show on in the barn and all that stuff. You've chosen to hear The Savage by the Shadows from that picture. What does this one call to mind?
Well, it calls that movie to mind, obviously, and this was the first time we'd performed a complete piece of music as the Shadows in a movie.
Yes.
And it was pretty well featured. Secondly, I think that record, I remember Brian May saying to me, Brian May of Queen, he said, look, a lot of people remember the Shadows with these beautiful tunes like Wonderful Land, he said, but they forget the hard side with things like Man of Mystery and The Savage, things like this, 36-24. And it is a fairly hard record with a lot of energy in it, and it's got a pretty wild guitar solo in, which was improvised at the time. But the terrible thing was this: when this came out, I wasn't entirely happy with it as a piece of music, and I expressed that concern to one of the music papers who printed it, of course, which upset Norrie Paramore because he'd written it.
Yes. Yeah.
So our manager, Peter Gomez, said, look, Hank, you've got to be more diplomatic in future and keep your trap shut. And apologise to Norrie, which I did.
Well, let's hear that from the film The Savage by the Shadows. The Shadows and the Savage, a composition by Norrie Paramore, your musical director at EMI. So he'd got on your wavelength by then. He was able to write a Shadows-type tune.
Yes, he was. He also wrote The Frightened City. From the film The Frightened City. Norrie was a good tunesmith.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, my feelings for The Savage changed over the years. I went back to it years later and thought, actually, this is pretty good. It's pretty good. In fact, when I was touring with my band, we used to do that in the show as well. Yeah. And the audience used to really love it. It's got a lot of energy in it.
It certainly has. Incidentally, the whole idea of making instrumental records and being instrumental stars, and at this stage nothing else, although you did sing later, that was very influential, wasn't it, in encouraging people to take the same path? Didn't people like Jean-Michel Jarre, say that his career in music, only music, as it were, it was inspired by you?
Well, I did a couple of things with Jean-Michel. I played on one of his albums, Rendezvous, I think it was called, and did the gig at Docklands with him.
Yes.
And actually, it was funny, it rained at that gig.
All those lights.
And I thought, I can't go on this rain. It's going to be, we look like drowned rats.
Yes.
Anyway, just before I won it, the rain stopped. Thank you. Oh. And I did the numbers without the rain, but I also did a gig with him in Paris for the centennial of the Eiffel Tower. Yeah. And when we did the Docklands thing, he very proudly showed me this photograph album with photographs of him with the red Stratocaster. He used to be in a Shadows band when he was younger. Yeah.
Fantastic. But we haven't talked about your writing much, but of course you co-wrote several of Cliff's hits. It's You was one, I think.
Yeah, G Was It's You.
On the Beach, I remember.
On the Beach.
Which others? Can you recall?
In the country. In the country. I Could Easily Fall.
Right.
Then I wrote The Day I Met Marie.
Yes.
And a few others on the first album, which he did, and some music from the films too.
As the group thing took over in post-Beatles years, in the mid-'60s, it seemed that everybody was singing. Everybody was demanding a microphone of their own, including lots of people who should never have been allowed near one. Did you consider the all-playing, all-singing option at that point?
Yes, well, the thing was that we were signed originally to Columbia Records as a vocal instrumental group. In fact, our first record as the Drifters was a song. And then the second was instrumental. The third one was, which was then The Shadows, was a song called Saturday Dance with Jack Good, the TV producer, saying this is one of the best sounding records that's come out of the UK. And then, of course, we had the hit with Apache. And because of having a hit with an instrumental hit, we tended to go down that path quite naturally. Yes. Seemed the logical thing to do. But we did a few B-sides as vocals and certainly a few album tracks as vocals. And in 1965, we had a top 10 hit with a song called Don't Make My Baby Blue.
Yeah.
And interesting thing here, Russell, went into Abbey Road one day where, as you've said, we used to record, and George Harrison was there. I said, "Who are you?" And he told me. Now, George, a lovely guy, and he came up and said, "Hank," he said, "I've just heard your record." He said, "I think it's fabulous. Don't Make My Baby Blue." And he said, "Can I just suggest something?" I said, "Sure." I thought he was going to give me a tip on how to play the guitar. And he said, "I think you should forget the instrumentals and concentrate on vocals. It's the way you should go." I think he was probably right at the time, but we didn't heed his advice.
You did eventually go for it, though, as Marvin Welsh and Farrah in the early 70s.
That's right.
Yes. The shape of that group was sort of in the tradition of Crosby, Stills, Nash.
Exactly, exactly. The American-style vocal approach, although we had a British touch to it.
Yes.
/ Australian with John Farrah.
Yeah. But when you did the Eurovision Song Contest, what was it, 75, I think?
It was 75, yeah.
That was with the reconstituted Shadows, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
John Farrah was still in that reconstituted Shadows, because John was a good singer. He had a nice, his normal voice was good, but he had a wonderful falsetto, and it was great when we did the harmonies. You get this real high top harmony on there.
And British competitors these days would be only too pleased with your result. I mean, you didn't win, but you came close. Yeah.
Do you know, when we were asked to do this by Billy Cotton Jr., we hummed and hawed. I got the call in. I was at the Abbey Road Studios recording, and our manager Peter Gormley called and discussed it with me. He said, "Go and have a talk with the guys, see what they think." He said, "I think you should do it though, because if you're thinking of relaunching the Shadows, this will be a good launching pad." And of course, he was right. So we agreed to do it, and before we went off over to Sweden to do it, to Stockholm, Billy Cotton, without a word of advice, he said, "Listen, guys, I wish you all the best." But he says, "Please don't win." He said, "If you win, we have to put it on next year, and it costs a lot of money."
Yeah. You mentioned relaunching the Shadows. Music fashions had changed a lot, and they kept on changing. And in several periods, the posturing was as important as the music and the costumes. Was it difficult to navigate a way through that in those years, given that success had come to you in the first place when you were very, very young?
Yeah. Well, different things happened through that period after the Shadows broke up at the end of 1968. Bruce left the Shadows then. For about the fourth time this day, when we decided, we'll call it a day. Yeah. Then I did a couple of series with Cliff in Unistubs on TV. Then we formed the Marvin Welsh and Farrah thing, and I decided to forsake the third series and concentrate on Marvin Welsh and Farrah. Yeah. We had a great time artistically doing that. Not much commercial success in the UK, but we had a couple of hits in New Zealand and Holland. Funnily enough. And then, of course, when we got the Shadows back together for the Eurovision, we were thinking, as I said, of reforming properly. And we didn't so much think of what other bands were doing at the time. Yes, clothes were different now, so we wear different kinds of clothes. The important thing we thought was, but first of all, the music. Let's try to record some good material. But at around that time, EMI Records said, "Look, we want to release an album called the 20 Golden Greats." And we thought, oh, really? Why? And they said, well, we think it'll be a big seller. And we thought, well, who's going to buy this, you know? Anyway, we were confounded when they released it as the third of their new TV series. It went on to sell over 1 million in the UK alone, and it was an enormous success. And of course, that was great for us, because now every man and his dog was buying that album and wanted to see the Shadows again.
Yes, yes. And listen to melody. I mean, there was a large record buying, it used to be record buying, it isn't anymore, audience that likes to be left alone with a melody. And this is what you've always done. I mean, especially when you went solo, that must have been a big step to start issuing solo records.
Yes, it was. This was, the first solo album I did was 1969, and there was a great piece of music on that, which I love, called Sasha, written by Jerry Lorden and Roger Cook. And they played this to me. I did record it, and fun enough, it didn't do anything here in the UK. Couldn't get airplay on it, but in Australia, someone picked it up, and it was the biggest selling record of the year in Australia in 1969. Still play it on the radio today, and people come up and say, "Love Sasha, I love Sasha." Yeah. This is like how many years later? Yeah, so that was Then I did a series of solo albums in the 90s and 2000s, and it was quite a challenge to do something quite separate from the Shadows, and want to do something different, get more creativity into it, put my own stamp on it. Yeah. But I have enjoyed the experience.
Yeah. The album, the Shadows album, String of Hits, was one of those that went platinum on the back of that enthusiasm for melody, didn't it?
Yeah.
And it started off with Riders in the Sky, a.k.a. Ghost Riders in the Sky, which I always think of as a kind of prototype Shadows melody before its time. It's an old thing, written in 1948.
I remember it as a child.
Yes, yeah.
With the country western singing, do-do-do-do-do-do.
That's right, yeah.
Good stuff, yeah. And of course, on that album we had, I'm not sure if we had Cavatina on that album.
Yes, because that's the track we're going to come to now. We're going to hear from String of Hits. These punning titles get everywhere. It is Cavatina, Stanley Mize's composition, which it seems to bring success to all manner of people. I mean, John Williams, of course, and Cleo Lane, who wrote words for it, and the soundtrack of The Deer Hunter. In fact, it was as the theme from The Deer Hunter that you put it out, wasn't it? That was your preferred title, yes. Clearly you didn't feel that all these other versions had extracted all there was to be got from that tune.
Well, as regards the band, we weren't sure about that, but EMI Records were absolutely confident that this could be a hit record. It was such a beautiful tune, and it was one of those magic things. We went in one afternoon to Abbey Road, and we got the track down very quickly, and I put my guitar on, and it was virtually done in one take. Apart from one little bit where there was a slight bit of distortion on the guitar, which I didn't mind, but it went too much at one point, and I just redid that little bit again because we felt it spoiled it. But it had a wonderful spontaneity and rightness about the track. And then it's interesting, when we were mixing it, the mixing room door opened, and in walked John Williams, the great guitarist. And he looked in and said, "Hi, John, how are you doing?" "Hi." He said, "What's this?" He said, "That's Cavatina, isn't it?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Is that you playing?" I said, "Yeah." He said, because he'd heard the high bit at the end, and he thought it was through the door. He didn't realise it was a guitar. He thought it was a synthesizer. So only when he opened the door and heard the guitar clearly, that he realised it was the electric guitar. And so it was nice to meet John, who originally had recorded it, and now we had the hit version, which was wonderful. Beautiful
Spied
tune.
on by your competitors, isn't it? Well, let's hear it, Cavatina. Cavatina, theme from The Deer Hunter by The Shadows, starring Hank B. Marvin, my guest, who by that time must have been meeting a lot of young guitarists who would tell you that you had been responsible for their taking up the guitar in the first place.
Yes, that's true. That's true. And that was really quite a good thing for the ego, of course, and very flattering. It's interesting that many of the people who say this are amateurs or semi-pros and are still playing. They could be accountants, lawyers, doctors, bricklayers, but they still love playing, and they play with some mates on the weekend. Some of them got little Shadows bands, that's great. But of course, on the other side of the coin, there are those who've become famous in their own right. People like Brian May, Jeff Beck, Dave Gilmour, Mark Knopfler, etc., Peter Townsend. And it's quite funny talking to guys like this, and Jeff was telling me in Perth a couple of years ago, he said, you're 80% of the reason I'm playing guitar, Hank. He said, I was in the Shadows band. We did all your stuff and the Cliff and the Shadows stuff. And he said we had a singer who looked just like Cliff. Girls loved him. He said he was the worst singer in the world, but he looked great. And, Brian May was saying that Peter Townsend said he and his friend used to run down to the shop as soon as they knew the new Shadows record was released, so they could be the first to learn it and impress everybody. And that's nice. But the good thing about these guys is, like me, they started off copying, and I think most people do that. So it's one of the learning processes. But then they realized they had to have something of their own, some originality about their work, some style, maybe a sound as well. And of course, that's what they've all done.
Yes.
And huge talents, all of them.
Your son Ben, you've been playing with a good deal on record too. Did that start with the album Guitar Player about a dozen years ago now, I guess?
No, he played on some other albums too. He played on the Hank Plays Cliff album.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah, and a couple of others before that too.
Uh-huh.
He's very good, Ben. 18 months ago, he completed his Bachelor of Music in Contemporary Guitar with honours, so it was good for him.
Wow.
He's a good player, and he's very musically inclined, and I like working with him because he's good, one, but he's good to work with. He's got a good nature, he's got a good sense of humour.
Yeah.
It's funny, when he was in my band, and a couple of times we had these end of tour dues, and you get a lot of these people to the record company, other things come in. There's all these sort of 40-year-old women say, "Where's Ben? Where's Ben?"
Yes.
They're all potty about Ben. What about me? No, and I was with my wife, sorry.
I know one you did together, certainly live together, and on the record too, I think. It was an extraordinary piece called A Tall, Dark Stranger, which, as the title might suggest, in an oblique way, is an Irish piece, very intensely Irish, with a sort of river dance beat to it.
Yeah.
Now, where did this one come from?
Well, how this came about was I was recording at the time, but contemplating a forthcoming tour and thinking I'd love to do a piece from Riverdance, and there's a piece called Reel from the Sun or something.
Yeah.
And I learned the first bit. I thought, that's really good. But then the next section was a nightmare to play. It's played very fast on the violin. I thought, whoa. Can't do this one. So I came up with an idea for the first part of the tune. And then I said to Ben, look, I really want to finish this off. So he came in with me and we finished it off together. We arranged it. And we put it in on that next tour. Well, it stopped the show every night.
I'm sure.
Just the two of us sitting on the front of the drum riser, playing this thing, and obviously the whole band coming in behind us. But they loved it.
Yeah.
So we recorded it on the Guitar Player album, and did that again on my last tour. And again, every night it was a showstopper.
Well, we've given it the build-up. Let's hear it. A Tall, Dark Stranger. That's a hectic piece. A Tall, Dark Stranger from the Hank Marvin album Guitar Player 2002. And it does sound pretty challenging to do, I must say.
Yeah, it sounds more challenging than it really is, to be honest, Russell. But I love playing it. And must give credit for the title to Mark Griffiths, who was our bass player at the time.
Yeah.
Because we were trying to think of a title, and he said, what about calling it A Tall, Dark Stranger? Great.
Have you seen Cliff on this trip? Because
No.
You see him at Wimbledon quite often, or you have done.
Well, certainly.
But you do meet up. I mean, it's a great old camaraderie to
Yes,
have,
we do. The
Yeah.
last time I saw Cliff Russell was at the beginning of 2013, February, in fact.
Yeah.
He came in on an Australian tour, and he was playing at the Sandalford Winery just outside Perth, and he asked me if I'd like to do some numbers with him, which, of course, I said no. Yes.
Yeah.
And we went for dinner with him, my wife Carol, and him and some of his family went for a dinner the night before. Then we did the show, and it was a good show. I enjoyed his new show, and we just did 3 numbers. We did Living Doll, Summer Holiday, and Move It.
And the last Shadows get-together was the 50th anniversary, wasn't it? That's
Cliff and the Shadows one, yeah.
Yes,
The reunion tour, yes.
That's a heck of a long time, isn't it? When you put it like
yes,
that.
Yes, it is.
50th anniversary. Yeah.
No, that was a great tour. Enjoyed that. We had
Were there
a lot of fun.
white heads in the audience, or did you find your audience had refreshed itself over the years?
Oh, a bit of a mixture, actually. We had a lot of, as you say, white heads in the audience. We also had a lot of bald heads, but surprisingly, a fair amount of younger people too. I think who had been sort of brainwashed by their parents, and they wanted to come and see what this is all about live. You know?
Yeah. Now, we must draw to a close, but we can't do that without hearing something from the new album. You've got a brand new album with a lot of summer connections.
Yes. Some of the songs have a direct connection, as you can see in the title, Summertime Blues, Summertime, Good Day Sunshine, Waterloo Sunset. Now, I've never seen a sunset in Waterloo, but I imagine that it only happens in the summer. Things like California Girls, automatically you think of sun, beaches, girls in bikinis, boys in boardy shorts. Yeah. These sort of things. And the songs I've chosen for this album, Russell, were all songs I really like. Still the connection with summer, but it was a pleasure to kind of reinterpret them. And one of the songs that I'm very happy the way it's turned out is an old standard from Porgy and Bess.
Yes.
And this arrangement was done by a friend of mine, Perth, Nunzio Mondia. It's a version of Summertime, very different from the way you've heard it before.
Some of these songs that one obviously goes back a long way, and we live in very fashion-conscious times, and I think musically repetitious times quite a lot. If young listeners went back more, they would discover that recorded music was sometimes a richer territory back then.
Yes.
Or is that a fogeyistic view?
No, I think you're right. It's funny that I've met a few young people who are interested in music and loosely connected with the music industry, and they have mentioned how rewarding it is to go back and check stuff out from the 50s, early 60s, mid to late 60s, early 70s, etc. And they've started to realize the sequence of events and how music has developed, but how rich that period was. To me, I love going back also with jazz to New Orleans jazz. Swing music, and you can feel how it all started to develop and how good that period was, and wonderful musicians, again, great tunes that we still remember with affection. I think you're absolutely right, Russell.
Good. Well, I hope those listening to this have enjoyed it as much as I have. 55 years is a long time to wait to meet a musical idol, but it's been worth it. Marvin, thank you very, very much.
Russell, it's been really weird. Thank you.
And here is your Summertime. From Hank's latest album, called Hank, George Gershwin's melody Summertime, done with beat and without the usual shimmering heat haze in the background. And if you've ever seen Hank on stage, you can easily imagine him playing that because he looks exactly the same. And the authoritative twang is still unmistakable. I don't think I've ever met anyone as little changed from what he was like when I was a teenager, a long time ago. My thanks to him for that spirited conversation, and thanks too to my producer, Sarah Cropper. Incidentally, as part of Radio 2's guitar season, some guitar greats have been sharing their love of the instrument in our Guitar Story films. Hank is synonymous with the Fender Stratocaster, but as you've heard, his first instrument wasn't quite what you'd expect. So go to the Radio 2 website now to see our Hank Marvin film, along with others featuring Slash, Martin Simpson and Joe Bonamassa. This has been a Wise Buddha production for BBC Radio 2, online, on digital radio and on 88 to 91 FM.